Welcome everyone to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. For those of you who tuned into yesterday's briefing, I spoke with Brigadier General Amir Avivi about the developments right now in the war in Gaza and the tensions that are growing between the IDF Chief of Staff, Eyal Zamir, and the War Cabinet, of course, led by the Prime Minister. And in that conversation, General Avivi noted that he spoke to one of his mentors, Major General Gershon Hacohen, and asked him, what would you do in terms of operations in Gaza? And he quoted Major General Gershon Hacohen as expressing uncertainty about what the clear path forward is. Operationally, it is not simple what to do in Gaza. And I thought, therefore, I must speak to Major General Gershon Hacohen to hear from him firsthand what he thinks about this tension that is growing right now in the upper echelons of Israeli leadership and how it impacts the war in Gaza. So take a listen to my conversation with Major General Gershon Hacohen, who has a very long resume of important accomplishments leading Israel in many, many wars.
The whole situation is very complicated. This is exactly the essence of war. The problem is not an engineering problem because the power relationship between IDF and Hamas, of course, giving a lot of superiority to IDF. But the constraints, they have no constraints. We have infinity constraints. The main constraints are coming from the Israeli society. Of course, speaking about the hostages, no sovereign state can lose proportion and deciding to concentrate in such an occasion only in one mission to release the hostages. Because we have not only to defend Israel, we have to exemplify that we are in a kind of resilience that could contain that way that Hamas are squeezing the Israeli society. More than that, it is also coming from the problematic relationship between the general staff and the cabinet, the political level and the military level, because they must work in a harmony that exemplifying shared responsibility. The way it is just working exemplifying the opposite, like a chief of staff is no more than a worker that getting orders, do that or do that. He is not at all, not beginning to do exactly what they are telling him to do. And he has his own responsibility to lead the political leadership to realize the whole complicated circumstances. If they'll tell him, do that and that and that, and he will do, and it will come to be catastrophe, he can't tell them, I just did what you told me, and I'm free, I did it. It is your own responsibility. No, it is his own responsibility because they are shared in the responsibility for the future of Israel. So it is a very interesting case study for every professor for political studies. The problem is that we are not in an academic seminar. We must find a way out from this sketch. And sometimes to realize that someone is in a catch is the beginning of solution. And yet the basic framework that created this catch is not yet defined, not yet coming to be familiar, not yet conceived. There are a lot of problems regarding the trust of the people in Israel, in the IDF, and in the Chief of Staff, and in the government. Prime Minister Netanyahu is absolutely dependent upon Chief of Staff by realizing that only the chief of staff could clean him from the blame. It is not a blame, but they are trying to blame him that all his purposes of war are just politically oriented. At the moment, chief of staff going to say, I'm accepting that order, I'm doing to do that in my best way, it is becoming an order that everyone come to obey, because chief of staff right now and always, but right now much more than always, coloring the whole mission in a different color, that saving it from being just a political interest of one party or another. So he is now the most central person in the Israeli state, and I'm trusting him. And we must also realize that we have yet the power. Of course, the hostages are in a very bad circumstances, but we cannot judge all the situation just regarding that trouble. We have the power, and we must not glide to uncontrolled anxiety that will take us from clear control about what we have to do. Therefore, we must first of all realize that the time is in our hands, not in the hands of the hostages, but in the hands of the Israeli state. We have our military capabilities, we have our good people, and we can wait to clarify what exactly is the appropriate process for us and appropriate mission to us for going to operate it.
Prior to October 7th, there was this perceived disconnect between the top echelon of the IDF and the government. And then likewise, in the beginning months or year of the war, there was this disconnect between the chief of staff, the former chief of staff, and the war cabinet. And I'm curious, it seems like that's happening once again. And when do we say the IDF chief of staff should push back on government decisions? And when do we say he should not be pushing back on government decisions? Because we've criticized in the past for that pushback.
Actually, it is not a question that there are concrete answers for that, because that's life without a definite criteria what to do here and what to do there. But the prime minister must realize that he can't just replace everyone whenever he has a problem. He replaced the last chief of staff, the last Shabaki commander, the advisor of the heuristic of the government, the chairman of a security committee in the Knesset. So he will not have soldiers to fight for him because he is losing trust. This is part of the constraints. And if he's not aware about that, he's not a leader.
So in your opinion, the IDF chief of staff or any IDF leader, a general, can and should, I don't want to say disobey orders, but push back in terms of directions given.
It is not direction killing. It is not a moral problem. It is an operational problem. We don't have moral problems because here we are struggling about the survival of Israel. It is not a seminar about morality. It is not at all. Maybe artists can speak about that. Now, what we are really under that burden is unprecedented dilemma about what is really true to do for the future of Israel. Right now, considering the status of the situation of the soldiers, of their vehicles, all the weapons, etc. We are already fighting almost 2 years. So that is not at all a moral question. Moral is part of it. It is a holistic dilemma. And because I'm knowing very well Chief of Staff, he was under my command, battalion commander, etc. He, of course, committed to the good future of Israel. He's not a political person. He's not guided by left-oriented expectations or right expectations.
So, are you able to give us a little more insight about the complexity of this operational decision? Every Israeli on the street has an opinion about what the army should do in Gaza, but few of
This is
them.
part of the problem. Not everyone can understand. We must first of all understand that the Russians in 1945, in taking Berlin, they lost almost 80,000 soldiers. And who killed them? Teenagers with a RPG. It was not RPG, it was called Panzerfaust, but it is a kind of RPG. And girls and grandfathers and grandmothers. Because struggling in a very narrow urban territory with a lot of tunnels, with the constraint not to kill uninvolved civilians. This is a very unique problem. If we will compare it to the battle of the United States and the Iraqi together with the Iranian Republican Guard in Mosul, it was just an urban terrain arena without civilians. Here, we must imagine million people around Gaza City.
So, is it safe to say that the final 25% in Gaza, where Hamas is held up with the hostages and the IDF has not yet operated fully, is it safe to say that that is the most challenging, booby-trapped laden, risky operation that the IDF would engage in?
No, we have all options. We will have to decide. We will have to find, but maybe by even trial and error, what will bring the victory, but not to be blocked in one form of thinking. And I am really trusting God. In God we trust, yes? And I'm sure that we will come out with a good outcome. But we must, first of all, realize the troubles.
And you believe that Israel will be victorious in its ability to destroy Hamas by the end of this war?
Yes, yes. But if not now, later, it is good that it will be now. But actually, it is an open question.
It's an open question whether we will be victorious.
No, when? Whether
Ah,
immediately or later.
right.
But we
And
have an ongoing war. It is not going to come to an end. If someone reading what they are writing, all the radical leaders, they are not at all going to bring an end. They are even redefining what is victory. They are emphasizing that victory is not what is considered to be victory in the Western world. It's not just in the material and physical world, it is also in the spiritual world. And they are admitting that they lost in all parameters of the physical world, but they are strengthening themselves in the spiritual world. So they will treat the wounded and recovered. And they are insisting to keep their obligation to idea of el-Mukawma that was called and translated in a mistake to be resistance. It is not at all resistance. It is tumemiyut. It is a uprising forever.
General, in addition to what's happening right now within the borders of Israel, can you kind of give us your perspective on the broader issues facing the Arab, the Muslim world in the Middle East and the developments right now with Hezbollah and the Sunnis and the Shias and all of that? I know you have certainly a lot to share on those issues.
We must understand that we are now facing a very dramatic challenge. Hamas now is an icon for all radical Islam in the way he's succeeding to survive under the Israeli attacks. Not Hezbollah, not Iran, Hamas. And the leader of the Houthi, Abdel Malak al-Houthi, praised him in the day of Ashura. It is a memorial day for Karbala battle in which the Shia and Shia and Sunna separated, and Hussein from the Shia was assassinated and all his people have been killed. This is an icon in the Shia for sacrifice. And Abdallah al-Houthi from Yemen describing the sacrificement of Hamas in their way of fighting against Israel as the best example in our generation of a Karbala battle. It means that Hamas are Sunna, not belonging to the Shia, but they are exemplifying the best symbol and the first symbol of the Shia, sacrificement. And another definite principle coming from that is what is called in Arabic sabr. It means patience, to wait, even if you are under bad circumstances, even if you are suffering, wait to salvation. And the situation giving them the hope that they can really wait, because the whole world is now against Israel about the people in Gaza starving from lack of food, harvest, etc. A disaster that it is not the disaster of the people in Gaza. They are not really hunger, but the disaster is for Israel in the public opinion in the world, and Hamas are taking that as a signal from God that they are in the right direction, that they can go ahead to sacrifice more. Actually, they are not really paying any attention to their own people. And this is also the difference between what happened in Hezbollah in Lebanon and what situation now in Gaza. The Lebanese Hezbollah organization really taking care about their own people in the Shia tribe in Lebanon. And they are under trouble and with awareness of impossibility to supply what they promised to rebuild their houses because they don't have now money. And thousands, more than thousands, maybe even 100,000 Lebanese are now without home. And they cannot get money to rebuild it. And Hezbollah are responsible for that, and they are taking that seriously because they are thinking with concepts of responsibility. They are not absolutely radical to ignore reality. Hamas, walking like ISIS, their main idea is that right now is the moment that whole idea is examined by God, whether they can sacrifice themselves to the fatal end. So if that is the hour, all practical reasoning are nothing in that hour. So they don't care about their own people, and more than that, the civilians, uninvolved people. And more than that, they are exploiting all success from the fact that they are suffering. If they will be killed, it is Israeli blame, Israeli fault. If they are under hunger, it is Israeli responsibility, not Hamas responsibility. Even though they are marketing with all the supply of the humanitarian aid and dealing with it with hypocrisy, even killing their own people.
What is your version of victory in this war on the physical and the spiritual level?
The best victory is that Gaza as a symbol is ruined in the same way that Jerusalem under Aspasianus and Titus was ruined. In the same way that Grozny in Chechnya was ruined absolutely by Putin. But this is a clear message of victory, but yet it cannot really bring the outcome, the whole expected outcome, because if we will do that and lose all support in the world, it is not a victory. So we cannot really come with narrow mind to say this and this is a definite goal. If we are bringing that, we are winning. It is complicated.
For sure, but it seems as time passes on, the world becomes more and more hateful towards Jews in Israel. And if we're measuring victory partially based on world opinion, are we not in big trouble?
We are in trouble, and we must live with the awareness that it is an unsolved problem. And this is the Bible, living with troubles. The mercy of God is not for eternity. To be a human being, it means to struggle.
Major General Gershon Hacohen, always a great pleasure to speak with you. Any final thoughts to all of our viewers?
And we must trust God. That's my practical assessment of the situation.
Thank you, everyone, for tuning into this briefing. We will be back with you tomorrow, 10 a.m. Eastern Time, 5 p.m. here in Israel. Until then, stay safe, stay strong. Take care, everyone.